Right.
Thank you for coming. So I know that there are a lot of other things you could be doing. You could be eating all the delicious food, but you came out and here to talk and listen to me. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to make it fun. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about fiction and animal rights fiction and how it helps, hopefully, the animal rights movement. So there's a few subjects I'm going to go over. First, I'm going to talk about some literary classics that inspired social change. Then I'm going to talk about one really great animal rights work of animal rights fiction. Then I'm going to talk about my own personal animal rights fiction, Persimmon Takes on Humanity, which is this book up here. And I'm going to explain why I wrote it, but also how I wrote it so that it would have effective tools to inspire people to make social change. And then I am going to open it up for questions. And you can ask about the subject or ask how I got this really cool haircut, whatever you like. Okay, number one, changing the world through imagination. How many people have read a book that made them cry or made them laugh? All right, hopefully, unless you're a robot, a book hopefully has impacted your life like that. So what I love about it is, an example for me is a book called HYPERBOLE and HALF, and it deals with the struggles of depression. And a lot of people have had melancholy moments in their life, and so this book hit home for me, and I really recommend it. So there are a lot of other books that talk about issues. To Kill a Mockingbird opens up people's minds about racial tolerance. Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852 when it was published was an incredible influence on people to understand that slavery is wrong, and it influenced a lot of people. It was a really important book for its time. The Grapes of Wrath, another book where when people read it, they finally understood about people that were migrant workers and how the Dust Bowl affected them, and how the Great Depression affected them. And some people thought maybe, oh, they're just lazy or whatever, but no, they were struggling. And when people read this book, they understood how some of the system set up by the rich affected the poor. Then we have The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. And interestingly, when that was written, it was meant to inspire people to understand about the workers in the stockyards and what they went through, the low wages, how dangerous their work was. But it actually inspired the people to care about how their food, the meat at the time that was produced, how all the conditions are so filthy and disgusting. And it actually brought about the Meat Inspection Act. And it got people thinking about, we need to start regulating it. Now, I think a lot of us know in this room that they don't do a good job of it, but at least they got the ball rolling. So for me, there's how is it that you can use this fiction for the animal rights movement? How do you use that social change to inspire people? So I started thinking about that a long time ago. And when I was a kid, my mom, I remember, read me Charlotte's Web. How many people have read or have been read Charlotte's Web been read to? Pretty much everyone, right? Just in case, I'll go over the story real quick. You have a little girl named Fern that finds out that a pig is going to be killed, and she saves his life. And then he grows up, and once again, he's going to be killed, to be eaten. And a wonderful spider that's living in his barn saves his life by showing the people that he's some pig and he's magical. And she's a very wonderful creature. So I want to tell you some stuff about the book that I thought was pretty amazing. You have, I'm going to read the very first line of the book is, "Where's Papa going with that axe?" Now this is a children's book, and that's the first line of the book. And it's showing that you have this little kid that's speaking up for another animal. The father is going to go and kill this new litter of pigs came out, and the ones will runt, and he's going to kill him. So Fern runs outside, she stops her father, and then they have this conversation. She says, "Don't kill him," and he says, "The pig's too weak, we have to kill the pig." To which she says, "The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I had been born very small at birth, would you have killed me?" The father says, "Well, certainly not, but this is different. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another." Fern's response, "I see no difference." That's amazing. A little girl, this is a story that parents read to their kids, and the little girl says there's no difference between killing a human and killing a pig. That's pretty inspirational stuff, and interesting enough, kind of radical. And it goes on. We have the spider, Charlotte, that saves Wilbur's life by creating these messages in her web that say how terrific he is and again how he's some pig. And this inspires the people in the barn. We don't want to kill this pig because he's amazing. So what's the whole story? The whole story is about this pig that doesn't want to die. So when people read this story to their kids, hopefully the child is, even if the parent doesn't make the connection, they just bake some bacon for their kid that morning. If the parent doesn't make that connection, the kid might. The kid might eat the bacon and go, but mommy, why do we eat pigs? So again, this is a classic story everyone's read. And there's a very important point I want to make. I absolutely love Charlotte's Web, but there's, in terms of animal rights fiction, there's one thing that I thought that could have been improved upon, which was you've got a Wilbur here, and he's sitting in this wonderful barn that's giant, and he has all this grass, and he has all these trees to look at, and he can eat out of this trough with all of his great food. But that is not the reality of what pigs go through. In reality, you've got sweet little, this is Wilbur in factory farms. And it's not very happy. He's behind bars. I'll show one more photo, a little graphic, just want to let you know, but these are real pigs. This is what they go through. This is miserable for them. So what I thought was, how can you use this medium of animal rights fiction to tell this pig's story? Because he deserves to have his story told, and he can inspire people to care. So I wrote a book. Let me tell you how I came about writing this book. In 2004, I read another book called Fast Food Nation. Has anybody read it or maybe even heard of it? Okay. So the book mostly talks about what the people that work in slaughterhouses, how they're mistreated, how the people that work in fast food industries, how they're mistreated. But when I was reading it, I started thinking about, well, what about the animals? The book doesn't go too much into that, but it kind of hinted at it. So then I started doing my own research. And I read some stuff on PETA.org. And I went to websites by like mercyforanimals.org, and to graphic photos. I came across stuff like this, and it horrified me. I was like, this is what cows go through? I just never thought about it. Cows in the dairy industry, cows in the beef industry. This is what chickens go through. And I was just heartbroken because I always think of myself as a progressive person. I care about LGBTQ issues, I care about women's rights, undocumented workers' rights. But for the first time I realized that my actions were not in line with my ethics when it came to animals. And if I wanted to consider myself to still be a good person, I thought, well, I need to stop hurting other animals. So I did that, and I became an activist. I went to all kinds of different events where I was, this is at a circus protest, and I went to SeaWorld protests. I would hand out leaflets, and I was trying to inspire other people to care about animals. But deep down, I'm a writer, and so that whole time I was like, I want to write a story that inspires people. So it took me about 10 years, and I came up with what I think was a really great way of inspiring people. So the basic story is, a group of animals, led by PERSIMMON, this raccoon, find out what humans are doing to other animals, so they go on this giant adventure to save animals from humans. And I was like, wow, that's really good because it's exciting, but then as people read it, they're learning about these different issues. When they go to a different place like a fur farm to save the animals there, well, people learn about what the animals in fur farms go through. So I had my premise and I was very excited about it, but I was writing it because I wanted to be an effective tool. And I decided I need to try to make sure what is it about this book that can make it an effective way to inspire people to care about animals. So I was like, first off, animal rights issues is a heady topic. It's serious, it can be depressing, and because it's a message story, you worry about, is it going to be preachy? So I thought, what's a way to get around that? I need to make a story that's so compelling, so exciting, that people don't want to stop reading it. So at the end of every chapter, there's a cliffhanger. When you're reading this book, you're always going to go, oh, what's happening next? It's like 1 in the morning, you want to go to sleep, but you want to know what's going to happen. And it's thrilling, and it's something that when you're reading it, it pushes you forward to keep reading. Okay, so the other important thing that I thought of was I wanted the book to be told from the animal's perspective. This is their story, and I want to give, as the book, I want to give them a voice. And like with To Kill a Mockingbird, Grapes of Wrath, all those books, for the first time with those books, you're seeing what it's like to be in their shoes. So this book, you're in the shoes of these characters that represent real animals in real life, and it helps you to empathize with them. Speaking of which, the characters in the story. So there's a few elements that I thought were very important when I was developing my characters. One of which was I want them to be lovable. I want people, when they read the book, to really root for them, and one way is to just make them really cute and sweet. So you've got Persimmon, and she's a raccoon, and she's very compassionate, and I wanted her to be a great leader, and I have her she makes decisions in the book that I'm not even brave enough to make, and I want her to be that hero for readers. Then I've got her adorable little brother, Scraps. And he's very feisty. He wants to go on adventures, so he's excited to inspire. He wants Persimmon to take him on an adventure. Then I have Durpoke, who is an opossum. And Durpoke is very cautious, very smart, and does not want to go on any adventures. But Persimmon and her brother Scraps are very insistent, so he kind of gets dragged along. Please, grab a seat. Yeah. And something else that I thought was very important was in the beginning of the book, the characters are not yet activists, okay? So they're presented with a scenario. They come across a group of animals that are being abused by humans, and they have two choices. Do we help these animals or do we leave? Now, when you read it, or if someone tells you that scenario, you see animals being abused, of course you think, oh, well, of course you should help. But for these little guys, they're going to go against humans. It's going to be very dangerous. They're going to risk their lives. So it's a really tough decision for them to make. But they don't hesitate because they're heroic. So that was something else that I thought was very important was I want people to be able to root for these characters. So whenever there's a decision to be made, they always choose the choice. It's risky, we could die, but they just do it. And I think that when people read it, like me when I was writing, and I was like, man, I really like these guys. I want them to succeed. So you really get along with them and you care about their mission. And people that don't care about the issues, again, the animals don't start out activists, so hopefully the average reader will read it and go, oh gosh, well I see these animals abused. I want to go on their journey with them. And then the reader will find themselves caring about animals that they eat. Maybe they're literally wearing that animal's skin, like a leather jacket, as they read the book and they go, geez, I need to start thinking about these animals. And so they're definitely not activists in the beginning. And then the final point was, I want the book to be an accurate depiction of what happens in factory farms, like I said, and fur farms and such. So people might think that pigs are happy and they're snuggling, and but again, they're miserable. They're in cages. When people read this book, I can't have them finish it and go, man, fur farms aren't that bad. Like, no, that's terrible. So I need them to go, fur farms are awful. I will never wear fur again. So that takes me to the next point. I have all my tools in place, my effective elements of writing a story that will inspire people, but now I need to do the accuracy thing, so I need to do research. So I spent months and months making sure that all the places the characters go, factory farm, a fur farm, and a circus, I needed to make sure that what I was writing about was honest and true. Also, I wanted to make sure when people, I figure some people are going to attack the book and say, no, animals aren't treated like that, and I can just go, actually, there's a website. So I watched a lot of undercover videos, and I saw things like this, and I cried, and it was awful. And I went to a lot of different websites like In Defense of Animals, PETA, Mercy for Animals, and I really filled my head with all that information. I read court documents, I talked to people that were undercover investigators. I really did everything I could to fill my brain with all these facts. But then they're just facts, right? So as the writer, it's my job to weave a exciting and compelling story. So I want to give you guys some examples of how I did that from my own book. Okay, so in the book, there is a section about fur farms. So the animals, Persimmon and her team, come across it and they're like, we need to save them. So here's some of the things I read about fur farms so I'd understand what happens in them. So when they're babies, female minks will have the babies, and babies come out in about April and May. And when they're about 6 weeks old, they're taken away from their mothers and they're put into different cages. they're put in these really filthy cages. They're stuck there throughout the whole summer month and into the winter. And interestingly enough, you might think that that is like poo on top of their cage, but that's their food. And it's never a good thing if your food looks like poo, so that they have a terrible life. So that was something I tried to remember. Another thing is all their cages have like wire at the bottom, and that's so that the fur farmers don't have to come along and clean the cages all the time. They just want to be able to neglect them for the summer and then come back in the winter and then kill them. So they just leave them in there, and sometimes the bathroom, the excrement is supposed to go through the bottom, but it doesn't. So then it piles up and the animals are just sitting in there in it. They get injured. They are stuck in these tiny little cages, and sometimes they're like metal wires, and it's just really dangerous in there. And they're running around, and they go insane because it's such a small space that they don't know what to do with themselves, and they're in there for months. This is a sad one. This is a fox, not a mink, but same thing happened to minks, where they'll get infections or they'll get the bruises, and sometimes they'll self-mutilate because they go so insane. This little guy, he gets an eye infection. They don't have veterinarians that come around and help them. So then that's months and months of just suffering. And then the way they are killed is there's a machine that comes around where they gas them. They put them in the machine. And another way they do is sometimes just break their necks. And it does not always kill them. And then that means that when they skin them, then they end up being skinned alive. Don't worry, I don't have any photos of that, but that's what happens. This is another example of a woman putting the mink in the container. So now I have these facts. So now it's my job as a storyteller to write something that will compel people to care about these animals. So I have an example from the book that I want to read to you. This is a point when Persimmon and her team have come across these animals, and she wants to help save them. So they're coming into the fur farm here. So the team crosses the grassy field. They can't believe they're finally on the other side of the fence. It felt like it was never going to happen, and now, suddenly, the moment is here. The moon is almost completely full, exposing them, so they move forward with caution. They didn't come this far just to get caught now. As the teams near the cages, the rank smell of excrement and urine attacks their noses. Scraps whispers to his sister, "Do you think the minks will be standing in their own feces just like the calves were?" Earlier in the book, they try to save some calves. "I'm afraid they probably will be," Persimmon replies. "This is getting to be a disturbing trend. And for what Vincent said, we're probably going to see even more upsetting things in the minks' cages than that. Are you going to be okay to see this?" "I can handle it," Scraps nods confidently. "I just want to get them out of there." "That's my brave little brother." The three teams are now at the edge of the cages. The minks in the cages have noticed the diverse group of forest creatures coming toward them. They've never seen anything like it. Some of them call out, "Hey, help us!" Persimmon addresses them. "Yes, we're here to help. We just need to check out the cages first." More minks yell, "Break us free! Help us! Open my cage, please!" Persimmon and Scraps climb onto the end of one row of cages. Raleigh and his team split up into pairs and crawl onto their assigned rows. Brewster stays on the ground, standing guard in case the dogs, or worse, the humans, come rushing at them. Each team of raccoons examines the minks in the cages, trying to determine if they're fit to run free. Persimmon and Scraps walk on top of the cages, looking inside. Inside each pen is a horrific sight. In the first, Persimmon sees one mink scratching deep gashes into his belly, another with pus oozing from his infected eyes, and yet another gnawing in his already raw tail, which looks ready to drop off at any moment. She winces, appalled at the bloody mess. In the next cage, maggots consume the carcass of a dead mink as the others huddle in a corner to avoid a terrifying scene and the atrocious smell. Many of the cages have dried bloodstains on the wire, dismal remnants of minks trying futilely to bite their way out. As Persimmon reaches another cage, a young brown mink begs, "Can you help us, please?" She is alarmed to see that one of his front paws is dangling, limp and broken. "Yes, sweet one, we're here to save you. We'll be..." The young mink tries to lick her through the cage. Thank you. I don't want to die in here." Persimmon rubs his head through the cage to calm him. "Yes, we'll be back. We just need to check the other cages." She and Scraps move on to another cage. The young mink calls after them, "Don't forget me, please! My paw! It hurts so much!" In a cage 2 rows down, Raleigh and Claudette see 4 minks covered in their own feces. A week ago, the excrement got blocked up at the bottom of their cage, ceasing to drip through. So now they're walking around in it, sleeping in it, living in it. Claudette gasps, how could the humans do this to them? It's as if they think minks aren't capable of suffering. They know beautiful. The humans just don't care, Raleigh states. It was the same thing with the calves. So Raleigh and Claudette are two other raccoons that are on the team. Persimmon and Scraps continue checking their assigned cages. As they go down the line, Claudette is clearly shaken. And she says, but look at them, chewing off their own tails, pacing back and forth in their tiny pens. I didn't realize the cages would be so small. It's no wonder they go insane. Persimmon and Scraps attempt to assuage all the minks that are crying, but some are hysterical. Help us! Help us! The minks pull and bite at the wire. Being so close to freedom has riled them up. Scraps speaks loudly over the pleading minks. All this just so humans can wear fur? This is awful, Persimmon. We have to set them free. Look at them running back and forth. They can surely sprint through that field and into the woods. Yes, only a few more cages. I think you're right, though. Persimmon and Scraps quickly scope out the final few cages in the row. More of the same horror. Infected eyes, broken limbs, fear, desperation, death. Raleigh hops down from the set of cages and darts over to Persimmon's row. He looks up at her and blurts out before she can say a word. Persimmon, these minks are desperate and need to get out of here. I know that we haven't checked all the cages yet, and yes, the minks are very badly bruised and some have broken legs, but the majority of them are running like mad in their cages. I'm sure they can make it to that fence there. This is sickening. They're suffering as much as those calves. Some are suffering even more. I really think we should rescue them tonight. Persimmon replies without hesitation. I agree. Raleigh, stunned, you do? I thought you were going to give me a hard time because we weren't doing enough research. No. This looks like it's something that absolutely must change. She smiles. And rarely, it looks like you're right for a change. So give the team the signal. We're saving these minks from this infernal place now. Raleigh exuberantly gallops off to the team. He shakes his tail around to signal that they're all clear to start freeing the minks. Persimmon turns to Scraps. Where's Vincent? You don't know who Vincent is, and I'm not going to tell you. So the story is right there. You're trying to show people what these animals go through. It's awful, and I can't imagine anyone reading this and going, that's okay, I hope they don't save them. You know, you're reading and you're like, I want them to get in there and save those minks. And there are some people that read this that wear fur and that wear leather and things like that, and hopefully they're making that connection. So I have another part of the book that's about the circus. And the team comes in and decides, well, we need to save these animals. So let me tell you some of the stuff that I read about the circus. That's the research. So when they're babies, the little minks are put in these, they're taken from their mothers very traumatically. I'm sorry, what did I say? Minks? Sorry. These are elephants, clearly. I'm still thinking about the minks. Okay, so these are elephants, and when their babies are taken away from their mothers at about 2 years old, it's very dramatic, and they cry and scream, but the trainers come in and they have like what they call an anchor elephant that they connect to the baby, and they pull the baby away, and there's nothing they can do. They put them in these warehouses for about like a month, and in the warehouse, they're basically trying to break their spirits. So they'll keep them chained up to the wall. They'll have chains on the floor, chains behind them and back. And they're trying to show the baby elephant that they are not in control of their own bodies. So what they will do sometimes is the trainers will come in and for about 20 minutes they'll walk the elephants around. But it's not to give them exercise. They're trying to show them, they have ropes on their legs and stuff, and they say, you know, you are not in control. The only place you're going to walk is where we let you walk. So the poor little babies kind of, and I love photos like this where they're all smiling and like, who cares about the elephant? Okay, phase 2, the elephants are then taken to like a mock circus ring, and they're trained on how to do all the tricks that then later on they're going to do in the circus. I don't know if you all know, but elephants do not naturally stand on their head, and they don't like twirling around and holding the tails of other elephants. They have to beat them to get them to do that. So they'll throw them around, yank them around, and you know, these are just like little babies. You know, they're like 2.5, 3 years old. They use what's called a bull hook, which is that poker there. It's like a fireplace poker, and it has a really sharp end, and that's used so that the elephants know when the trainer hits them with it, don't do that or do that. And they actually specifically focus on very sensitive areas of the elephants, so like the ears, the top of the head, like above the eyes, because they know that that's the place that's going to make them do the stuff more. Again, very important point, the training is about dominance on behalf of the humans dominating the animals. It's about subservience, teaching them that they're subservient to the humans, and they're trying to break their spirit. So this is what they're going through. This is the information I was given. And now, as the writer again, it's my job, how do I make that into a compelling story? So I came up with a backstory. I have an elephant named Nayana, and you start from the very beginning when she's being trained, and you go through her life in the circus. So I'm going to read to you a section where she's being trained in these awful sessions. Lie down, you dumb animal. Randy smacks the bull hook into Nayana's back. She squeals, her trunk flailing in the air. 5 other trainers pull tightly on the ropes tied around her legs. They hold Nayana on the ground for almost a minute. That's right, keep her down. The animals may be stupid, but they catch on eventually. Nayana struggles to break free, but the workers hold their grip. Let me go, brutes! You have no right to do this to me! And release, Randy orders. The workers give the young elephant just enough slack to sit up. Nayana breathes heavily, exhausted. They've been at this for an hour, hitting, yanking, pulling, prodding, and forcing her into various wrenching positions, making her learn absurd tricks for upcoming circus routines. It's been more than a year since Nayana was first trapped in the warehouse. She spent 5 months locked in that empty room all alone, chained to the walls for hours upon hours. She stayed strong though. She didn't let those intolerable walks crush her, despite the jabbing bullhooks, despite the inflamed sores around her ankles where the ropes chafed her skin. She didn't let those abuses break her. But that was nothing compared to what she's enduring now. The isolation was just a method to wear her down, to break her spirit. Now she's on to the actual training, and it is pure hell. Twice a day in 2-hour training sessions, Nayana is yanked around and beaten to force her to learn tricks completely unnatural to elephants, many of them dangerous for an animal of her size. Lie down, sit up, balance on the pedestals, do headstands, spin around. These sessions occur in a hidden fenced-in area so that no one can look in and see the baby elephant struggling for her life. Loud classic rock music is played to drown out Nayana's cries. There is no relief, no escape. Only a dozen people in the world know that she is here now, and the circus trainers want to keep it that way. Randy, still donning his laughable safari getup, lords over the sessions. He orders the 5 trainers around, teaching them to dominate the young elephant. She ain't learned yet, he hollers. I want to see her bow down to me just so I can show her, just when I show her this bullhook. He hoists the jagged metal stick above his head. Break her right. Do it again. The other trainers grab hold of the ropes attached to Nayana's legs and belly and wait for his next command. Nayana tenses up. She knows what's coming. Like some grotesque medieval torture technique, the trainers pull on the ropes, spreading out all 4 legs of Nayana. Pull, Randy orders. The trainer is holding the rope attached to Nayana's left leg and yanks it violently on the line, pulling Nayana's leg underneath her and sending her crashing to the dirt. A perilous maneuver, since the young elephant's weight could crush her fragile inner organs. Randy swiftly smacks the bullhook down onto Nayana's spine. Nayana cries out panicked, Mommy, I need you! She desperately wishes her mother would come crashing through the fence to rescue her, but it is hopeless. Her voice is drowned out by the blaring rock music, and even if her mother could hear her, she couldn't remove her own chains to get to her daughter. And where would they go? They are oceans away from the comfort of the South Asian plains and forests. So, once again, I can imagine a monster who would read this book and then go, that's okay, let's do that to elephants. So my hope is that when people read it, they're so moved by this that they don't ever want to go to the circus again. And I don't blame people, because the thing is they don't know. A lot of people just have no idea that this is what happens, and the circus keeps that hidden from you. They don't want you to know. So my book did a lot of research to go in there and try to tell people this is what really happens and hopefully make them actually care about it. So then the question is, was the book effective? So luckily I've had some great feedback. Nathan Runkle, who I very much admire, runs Mercy for Animals as the president and founder. And he said it was powerful, captivating, and inspiring. By the time you turn the last page, this book will have changed your life. So he's somebody that I completely admire. He took the time to read the book. And another person, Gene Bauer, who I greatly admire. Not only is Persimmon Takes on Humanity a riveting read, but also tackles one of the most important issues of our time with poignancy and heart. And also Marisa Miller-Wolfson. A lot of people who I very much admire took the time to read the book, and she did Vegucated, which is an amazing documentary. I highly recommend it. And again, she really did a great job of advocating it for me. So I also then, people have been nice enough to leave reviews on Amazon, and that's very kind of them. It helps encourage other people to get the book. And I had a grandmother who got the book for her granddaughter and said that it actually inspired both of them to go vegan after reading it. So that was a great day for me and the animals. And the other thing that happens is people that are already social activists, people that care about animal issues, will read the book, and it actually reinvigorates their activism. So this was someone who read the book, and they said sometimes you can get complacent, but when they read the book, it made them want to help animals again. So this is why I wrote the book. I really wanted people to care, and I genuinely means the world to me when I hear back from people and they say the book changed my life, because every time I hear that, I know it changed some animal's life out there. So I want to open it up for questions and see if you guys, it can be about writing in general, yeah, what's up?
Have you ever went to a circus before?
Yes, so I used to eat meat when I was a kid. I went to the circus, I went to zoos. I did not know what happened in those places. And the sad thing is, especially for places like the circuses, kids love animals, and so they're like, parents take them to the circus and they love just seeing the elephants jumping around, and they think that's fun. But they had no idea that the elephants go through all the pain and horror beforehand. And I think that if kids knew, they wouldn't want them to be harmed. And I think if you were to go up to any kid, and I've done this, I've gone to these protests, I've talked to the kids and said, do you know what happens? And they don't, and I tell them, and they're like, well, that's terrible. They don't want to support it, but I think parents maybe they don't know what else to do with their kids. They're bored and they're like, let's just take them to the circus, So that's why now as an adult, I'm hoping I can also reach young people. The book's meant for young adult because I think in high school and college, you're away from your parents for the first time, and hopefully you're saying sometimes with things like eating animals and stuff, you're saying, you know what, my parents weren't right about that, and they have an opportunity to not eat animals because they're not being fed by their parents anymore. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm a student. Coming from a fashion point of view, because I'm like really into fashion and stuff, what if you consider vintage fur versus fur that is newborn for shops sold today? And what is your opinion about furs still being sold?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when you go vegan, you have this conundrum because you're like, I still own leather, I never had fur, but like leather and things like that. And so suddenly you're confronted with, what do I do? Do I overhaul my entire closet? And a lot of us don't have the money to do that. So I think if you need to take the time to, slowly but surely get rid of some of like your wallet, sometimes you have a leather wallet or whatever, over time, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the idea of like vintage fur, I know there's even faux fur, although be careful. Places like the Humane Society have done research, and like, I don't know the percentage, but some of the fur that's labeled as faux fur is real fur. And that's just because it's from another country and they didn't label it. They don't care, and so they'll just mislabel things intentionally because they're like, well, we can just sell this as faux fur, and it's very cheap to raise animals and then kill them for their fur. So that's why they end up doing that. So some place like that has faux fur, I'm not, or like real fur. I mean, I wouldn't wear it. Like I don't really want to make it seem like it's okay to have like fur that you're still wearing. And I think it probably would get a lot of stares from people, on the street. You're like, oh, is that real? Animals suffered. So I would say that just probably stay away. There are so many wonderful synthetics. Like you don't need to have another animal's fur to keep you warm. Like you'll be good. Yeah.
There's this one in San Francisco here, very beautiful, graceful, and feminine. What's your plan for flash photography and animals?
What was the first part of the question?
What's your plan for flash photography and animals in photograph? Are you totally against this?
You mean like in like a zoo or something? You just mean like in general?
In general.
Yeah, I don't know that as much about like photography and how obviously I wouldn't want to upset, first of all, don't go to the zoo because the animals don't want to be there, but you mean like if someone has a dog or something and they're like taking a picture?
For example, the swan in San Francisco.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really beautiful.
And so some people come by and take photos of her?
I just snap their iPhone.
Yeah, I mean obviously if it's like upsetting to the animal, I wouldn't want them to, have it be upsetting, so.
I throw their phone in the water.
What's that?
do that.
Yeah, so it is upsetting. So the flash upsets them? Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, then, yeah, sure, I wouldn't want. I think that's another issue. I think people don't know about that. Like, that's something I've been vegan for like 10 years almost, and that's not something I necessarily thought of.
You stop doing this.
Yes, done. No more flash photography.
And also, you mentioned SeaWorld.
Yeah.
I was a volunteer at the Long Bay Aquarium this summer
Mm-hmm.
for a few months, and I stopped volunteering there. I wasn't 100% with volunteering there. Some of the stuff that I saw, although the husbandry practices are up to par, I just don't agree with having them.
Yeah, so zoos, aquariums, places like that, they're some of them, like SeaWorld even, they will do some work to help animals, okay? But like 99% of the work that, for example, someplace like marine parks where they have orcas doing jumps and stuff, their whole business model is to exploit an animal for free. The animals don't make any money. They're miserable their entire lives, and these places make all kinds of money off of them. So I know that some people defend SeaWorld. They're like, oh, but they help the animals along the ocean and all that. And you're like, yeah, they helped one seal last year. Great. They also torture these other orcas most of the time. So anywhere that has animals as like, for fun to go look at them, just be leery. I would recommend just don't, go to those environments because they're not helping the animals. Now there are sanctuaries, and those like Farm Sanctuary or someone like that, and there's some really good ones that help teach people about the animals. And that's different. But a place like a zoo or an aquarium or places like that, they're not there to. It doesn't educate someone about a lion to see them in a cage like that. Watch a National Geographic. That will teach you about lions in the wild.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to frame my question, but I work in an elementary school
Yeah.
here in the city, and I think it's like me and one kid who are vegetarians, but I know all the kids that I work with, I'm kind of a specialist. I work with kids that learn differently, and every kid I have ever encountered and am encountering now, they would like read this, enjoy this book, and they would go, oh God, I know they would start changing.
Yeah.
I know it because I
Yeah.
know who these kids are at heart. But I like, I feel like, like I'm already, like I don't want to get in trouble. I mean, how, do you have any
Yeah.
ideas how?
Right.
Oh, what I was thinking is maybe at a PTA meeting,
Yeah.
I could like tell the parents, I'm going to kind of educate the parents.
Sure. Yeah.
But I do have the idea.
Yeah, well, so my mom's a teacher, and I still have a soft spot in my heart for teachers. I genuinely think that there are people like yourself that I'm so thankful that you exist because you are helping to show kids about compassion. And I know for me, like I have like a niece and nephew, and they're not vegan, and I don't ever shy away from telling them the truth, So I think there's that concern, like you don't want to get in trouble or whatever. But I think if you do it in a respectful way, that and especially maybe you can let the parents know in advance, like, oh, this is what we're going to talk about for this. You can give them your curriculum, so that this is what we're talking about these weeks. So if they have any issues with it, but I would always say to any parent, if they have a problem with it, I say, I think a really good trait and a really good thing a parent should do is teach your kids compassion. So that's what I'm doing. I'm teaching kids to be compassionate toward other animals. I would think that would be something that you would be teaching at your house as well. And that's a little passive-aggressive way of making them feel bad about murdering animals. But you know what I mean? It's like I go from that angle. I'm just like, hey, like this is not a radical concept. The idea of if we brought a pig in here, I think it would make more sense for all of us to pet the pig than to kill the pig. No, it's not natural to be like, let's murder that pig. Like that doesn't make sense. So I think there will be some parents that are going to be uncomfortable with it. But if you maybe preface it and tell them, hey, these are the things we're talking about, hopefully they'll be open enough. But yeah, you might still get them. Yeah.
The thing is, I know the parents that go to this PTA meeting. They're very sweet people, but I think they're uncomfortable because they're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, sure.
They kind of know, that's probably the right thing.
Right.
So, but I don't want to make. So it's just kind of tricky. Like,
It is.
I wanna,
It's very
make
tricky.
Them feel better, and
Yeah, so I mean, maybe then, if you, like you said, maybe beforehand, if you expose the parents to the information, and, you know, I mean, I was kidding about the passive aggressive thing, because the truth is you just are educating them, and you just want them to know, and I think it's important to then make them feel welcome. You know, I'm of the mind that friendliness and being genuinely nice to people is a better way to influence them about an issue than attacking them and blah blah blah, you're a murderer, you know, like that doesn't work. So I come from the mindset that you just have a conversation with someone, a lot of times,
Let it go.
yeah,
Concede, let it go.
right, yeah, it'll go over better. But thank you for exposing your kids to all of that information. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned your target audience is like young adult,
Yes.
adult kind of deal. Have you thought about writing something for like, you know, middle school and below? Like a lot of, I'm thinking of kids who are have their bedtime stories read to them by their parents. You know, something a lot simpler, obviously.
Yeah.
They could follow and, you know, maybe a little bit of less detail and you know,
Sure,
more
yeah.
to them.
Yeah.
That's a good target age to really
Absolutely,
start
yeah.
thinking of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a really great writer, Ruby Roth, who does children's books about animal issues. So so before I am able to get to it, she already has some really great stuff. But I absolutely one day may look back. This is the first book of a series, so I have a few more years before I'm done with the series to start rejiggering it and be like, yeah, oh, let me tone that down, you know. But I absolutely think that every kid, no matter how young, should be exposed to this information. This one I wanted to get high school and college because some of the scenes, as you saw, were graphic, and so I don't think a little child, it is not a bedtime story. And I want people to just know really what happens. But I do want to make the point, I know I read some stuff that's kind of gruesome, but the whole book's not like that. The main characters are great buddies, they're great best friends, and there are some humorous moments between them. And then also, when they're rescuing the animals, that's really exciting. Like, I know when I wrote it, I was thrilled to watch them go in there and save those animals because I felt like I was living through them, you know? And it is realistic. They don't save every single animal they run in contact with, but it meant so much to me to watch them struggle to do it. So that in of itself was exciting. And I think when people read it, it is thrilling. But I set up each section with kind of the truth, and then you see them go in and try to save them. Oh, yes? Sorry, I'll come back. Yeah.
What did you read before you started writing fiction that was like, I love that style?
Sure. You know what's interesting? A lot of people ask me, what author inspired you? So I will say, in terms of my creativity, music actually inspires me more because when I hear a song, immediately I start thinking, what scene would go with that song? So like a movie scene or a book. Music, I already start seeing the images in my head. So I do love certain authors. I really like The Martian Chronicles. I think is really great by Ray Bradbury. Just so clever. I really love that. I loved Catch-22. And Watership Down is an excellent book. So they're definitely books I love. But if you're talking in terms of what inspired me as a writer, there's no one that you know, and I'm not like I'm just a natural genius, you know. It's more like I always wrote. Like when I was a kid, I wrote, like I have a novel I wrote when I was 9, and I was like, who did I think I was? I was 9 years old, you know. But you read it and you're like, yeah, it's okay, you know. No one here is ever gonna read it though, because it's not that okay. But you know, you have like a passion for something, and I had no idea where it came from. I just had stories and I wanted to tell them. And they just come out of me, so.
Cool, thanks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And if you want
Yeah.
to, not bigger, contact me.
Oh, I don't know, we'll chat. Yes.
You said it took you 10 years. Like, what was your kind of research and writing process like during that time? And then also, why did you choose fiction versus say like nonfiction?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So this book didn't take me 10 years. I wrote this book, the first draft, in a year, and then the second year was some rewrites, and then mostly the publishing. But what took me 10 years was I wanted to write the story. The moment I became vegetarian and then vegan, I was like, I'm a writer, I should write a story about animal issues. And so I wrote other things about animal issues, but none of them, I was like, I don't know, something's still missing. So it wasn't until I came up with this idea, I was like, that's it, this is the one. And it was because inherent to the story, you learn about the issues, but it's like a really exciting story. So there's never a moment when you're like, come on, it's like every scene, you're like, when are they're gonna save them? You want them to keep, so, what was the other part of the question?
Why fiction?
Oh yeah, so I've always been a storyteller, and so when I read Fast Food Nation, one of my first thoughts was, this is excellent, and there's some really great nonfiction books about animal issues that I highly recommend, it's kind of like facts don't interest me as much, so whenever I was confronted with the facts, I immediately was like, what would it be like for an elephant to go through that? And then I start just coming up with the story, so it just kind of like came out of me. I've always just been drawn to fiction, and I always felt like I learned deeply from like storytelling. Even documentaries, when they have like a really great story, it's just so compelling, and it just draws you in and makes you want to care about that issue. So I felt like it would be a powerful way to hopefully inspire people. Yes?
How much is the book and where is it available?
Oh, well, thank you. I'll give you free. So it's $14.95, and I have a booth here. I'm here. You guys can. We can walk back together, or whatever. But also I can have some out here. But that's very kind of you to ask. It's this is a dream come true for me. I've been a writer forever, and this is my debut novel. So for me to finally have that story where I was like, this is the one. This is the most exciting time of my life. So thank you for being part of it too, for chatting with me about it.
How much did you say it is?
$14.95, 14.95.
Is it on Amazon?
It's also on Amazon, and it's also a Kindle version on Amazon. If you get it today, I will sign it. Just throwing it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this brief and make it a two-part question.
Okay.
Number one, what was the initial event that inspired you to write the novel Persimmon's Takes on Humanity?
Yeah.
And the second question is, was the saving the animals part of the novel inspired by radical environmentalism by any chance?
Oh, so
Earth liberation.
like direct action stuff. So the first part of the question, what inspired the specific story? So when I would talk to people, I don't know how many people are vegan or vegetarian here, but people like to debate with you about that a lot. And so you have all these conversations, and I would use this analogy. I said, what if a group of aliens came down to Earth and they started doing to us what we do to all these other animals? So they put us in cages, and they want our hair to cut off and wear it. They want our skin. And I would tell them that, and it was to put themselves in the place. You are literally that animal. You're that human. How would you feel? And I always found that people, that kind of got things going and really made them think. So I was like, well, I should tell that story. But I'm not a science fiction writer. Because I was like, oh, okay, I'll have an alien race. But I was like, I don't know what the hell, what are they going to look like? Where do they come from? Well, that's complicated. But then it was like, it should be from the animal's perspective, because when people read it, if they're put in that animal's shoes, like immediately they're going to empathize with that mink, right? They're going to read it and they're going to go, oh my God, that poor mink. And then they might look down at their shoes. And by the way, the fur industry is very clever now. They know people don't want to buy coats, so they put a lot of trim. So a lot of people will have on their backpacks or their collar of their coat or their boots, it'll be fur trim, and they'll be like, it's just a little bit. But they sell so much of it that from what I've heard, like the sales of furs like gone up again, which is terrible, but that's their clever new way of tricking people. So that was kind of that, and then the direct action. So for me, what I liked about it was, if I had written a book where it's a bunch of humans doing direct action, going around saving animals, everyone immediately would be like, those extremists, right? So I was like, well, if it's a group of animals that sees other animals, and by the way, I know humans are animals, but I'm just using that term in that sense. But if a raccoon sees a mink suffering, and she wants to save that mink, I don't think people as much are going to be like, she's an extremist, It's like, she's a raccoon, She's saving another animal. She's but hopefully, people that are really smart will be like, well, humans are animals too. So I don't want this other animal to be harmed, so why am I disassociated from what persimmon, you know? It's like immediately she sees these animals and she's like, that's terrible, we should save them, you know? So why is a human see an animal suffering and not immediately go, well, that should stop, you know? And hopefully the book gives people pause to think like that.
So what you're saying is that raccoon can have compassion for other animals. Hey, I can
Maybe.
have compassion too.
Yes, that is my slogan of the book. Yeah.
Well, I have read your book, and I did find it very exciting. And but what I found troublesome, maybe, in the way I've put it out there, is I mean, I, as the reader, wanted those other humans dead. I wanted them to kill as many of them as possible. And so that definitely, that direct conflict with, wow, okay, here I am, feeling that rage and total disregard for who they were, because they were presented to me as a two-dimensional character who was very cruel to animals. And so I wanted them to die and suffer.
I like to make the point, do not kill humans. Not the point of the book. But yeah, so what I'll say, that's when I read it turns you into a serial killer, is what you're saying.
Because if you presented, the characters you presented, the people who worked in the circuses, they were very uncaring, and they were very cruel to the animals.
Yeah, I tried to have some, I don't want to give too much away. I do have like a human that's very kind that, I don't know, I think we're going to be okay. There's so many other things to eat. All of those people that are farmers now, I don't know, have soybean farm or, there are other ways of doing it. There's healthier food. But yeah, it's not in any way to demonize, and I do explore that more. There are some good people that they're going to come across. So it'll hinder all those urges to murder humans in book 2. Yeah.
You mentioned factory farms, but what about those mythical humane farms? Because people think that, I'll just get my meat from some humane farm, but of course those don't exist, as we all know.
Sure.
Can you address that? It's not just factory, so it's all animals.
Yes, yeah. I don't particularly mention like humane farming in the book. I try to keep it realistic. So I don't have like, persimmons like, what about humane farming, guys? She doesn't like know about that, But yes, humane farming is a myth. The animals are not treated that much better, and also they are still murdered. So the end result is still a big problem. So it's just a marketing ploy to get people to buy the same product. Same thing with like cage-free eggs and stuff like that. But you know what the good thing about that? It shows that people actually do deep down care, and they're looking for a way to make a change. They're just not making the right change. They're making the easiest change, which is, I still get to eat meat, but they treat them better? Okay. So now it's our job to continue to enlighten people about the fact that no, it's not better for those animals. And I know it seems like an uphill battle, but the very fact that they care shows that I think there's an inroad there, Oh yeah.
If you'd like me to make my personal plug, I would love to.
Oh yeah, he's a writer as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I've written a fiction from the human point of view, and the conflict is a person discovers they have type 2 diabetes, and then they face a world of messages from the world about meat and all this immersion in school culture and all these things that are going to make him lose the path to finding veganism. But he finds veganism and he heals, and his family and all the community come out to support him along the way in an adventure. So it's a fictional, it's a thriller. People have given me great feedback. So it's called Sweet Healing, A Whole Health Journey. And thank you for this.
Oh, of course, yeah. Hopefully one day we'll both be we'll have tables side by side, and I'll be like, here, this is my book, this is his book.
I like the idea of how you use the story of fiction to kind of tell the story of why to become vegan. And I wondered if you have any idea how to do that other than a book format or through other kinds of media.
Yeah, well, I think this would make a really great movie. Oh wow, hey, let's start raising funds, guys. I went to a film school, so actually when I first had the idea, I was going to write it as a screenplay. But then it started getting more and more complex, and I was like, I think it'll be better first as a book. And it just seemed to work better as a book first. But it's very cinematic. That's the way I think in images. So I feel like I've already seen the movie because I literally that's how I wrote the book and man, I would, like the rescue scenes, I think they would be so awesome on the big screen. So yes, I would absolutely love. But yeah, I think there are, TV, my wife and I, when we watch TV shows, we always get annoyed because whenever there's like a vegan character, like they're like dorky and they're just like, come on, that's not me, So like I would love to see them represented better in like TV and all that. But I absolutely think that it could be. I know there's a rapper who does like vegan rapping, so there's definitely ways of doing. In comedy, there are comedians who do like kind of more of like a animal rights bent sometimes. Mike Kaplan is one. So there's so many different ways. I'm a writer, so I did this, but we all have our own talents. And when you start wanting to do animal advocacy, the best advice I would give is just what do you love, what's your passion, and then do that as your animal advocacy. So if you're into fashion, then make your own line of clothing, like Vote Couture or Brave Gentleman, that is all animal friendly, and use your skills to help animals. Not everyone's meant to go out on the street and hand out leaflets. Some people are very good at that. But if that's not your thing, that's fine. You can help animals in any way that you're really good at. And some people are shy, so they don't want to have to go out. And so you can do things from home that help animals as well. Any other questions? Do you have another one?
Well, just a comment that I know. If a teacher was doing this, because I identify as an educator, I really like the photos you showed.
Oh,
You showed us a real elephant at the circus being brought
Yeah.
in. You showed us the real minks in the cages. To me, to see that real thing,
Yeah.
and then get the story you read, parts of the story.
Yeah.
It was so good together. So could you offer those real images to the person who bought the book?
Oh, well, I don't own those images. So for an environment like this, I'm not getting paid to do this. So I'm able to just use them. But you'd have to then get clearances, and technically you could, but I just haven't, reached out. Like so the elephant ones, I think PETA. Those are PETA. I got them off their site, and they had finally a person who had been an elephant trainer for years. After all those years, decided to expose the truth, and he happened to have those photos, But places like Ringling, they don't let anyone there. When they train those elephants, they try to keep. It's in Florida, at a place that they ironically called the Center for Elephant Conservation. And when's the last time they released an elephant into the wild and didn't make any money off of them? But they don't want anyone to know that's happening. But luckily, that guy exposed that. But that'd be good.
Maybe an educator could I just like that.
Yes,
the way you
yeah.
put the real picture.
Right, and then No, I agree. I think it is a very effective. And I forgot to mention this. So some of these photos, when I wrote the book, I would have them on the screen as I wrote it, and I would have video that would be on a loop of like elephants being abused. And I know that sounds like, how would you do that to yourself? But it reminded me consistently that this is who I'm writing the story for, and I need to write the best story possible because they deserve for people to know what's really happening. And so, for 3 hours looking at a photo of a poor mink with a bloody leg is terrible, but I never lost sight of why I was writing it, And I'm writing the second book, and I'm doing the same thing. These animals are suffering immensely, and it's my job to make a very vivid description of what that's like. Yeah.
Could you share a little more about your vision for the series as a whole, like where it is going after the first book?
Yeah. So I'm writing the second book. So each book is going to cover different issues. So I'm not going to do. I did the fur farm, factory farming, and circuses in the first book. So in the next book, it's a teaching tool. So I'm going to have them go to 3 different places, or maybe more, and they're going to be exposed to that. I won't tell you exactly where, but if you were to sit here and make a list of all the animal rights issues, I guarantee that they'd be in that list. And for each book, it's to try to hopefully show you, this is what's happening in that issue. And then also, there's like a broader story of what I want people to see in the book is animal activists, what it's like to be an activist. It can be discouraging. You know, there are times when the characters go and they're like, we need to save them, and they run into a lot of problems. So I want people to know that, you know, what the life of an activist is like. And so the book too also explores more of kind of, there are different ways, you know, like there's different methods that people use to help animals. And unfortunately, within any great cause, there's some infighting about how you can make this cause, you know, successful. And so I explore those ways with the characters of them kind of going back and forth. This is the method, no, this is, and things get complicated because of that. That said, the characters, the animals are always still heroes. You know, I don't ever want them to become the bad guys. I remember I saw a movie and they had like, at some point then, like one of the animals was like, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. You guys seen that? So like in the second one, whatever, you don't go watch it, so I'll ruin it for you. One of the apes ends up like being a jerk and like trying to kill, and you're like, he's like killing one of the other apes. And I'm like, that's ruining everything that this series should represent, which is I want them to be more enlightened than we are, and they're trying to help each other. They disagree, but you know, I want the animals to show humans that there's a better way of doing this. Now that said, the humans in the book complicate things, so the animals do at times have to defend themselves, but you know, they're trying their best to do it in the best way they know how. Yeah. So and then there's the third book. I'll get to that as soon as I finish the second book. But yeah, it's coming along really well. It's very exciting. And if you like the first book, you're really going to like the second one. I think that's all the time I have. Do you have a quick question?
One quick
Yeah.
When do you think
So hopefully maybe late next year or early 2017. I know that seems like a long time, but it just takes forever for me to, you know, do all the research. That's what takes time. But I want it to be accurate. Thank you for asking. So thank you so much for coming. I do have a booth here, and I hope you can drop by. It means a lot to me you came. Thank you.